Hello and welcome, I'm the Rambling Director, and today we're going to talk about The Invisible Man's Revenge. Now last time we talked about The Invisible Man Returns, which I said on a purely objective level I thought was as good as the original, although I still think the original with Claude Rains is a movie I enjoy more. I think objectively they're on pretty even footing. However, today we're going to be talking about a movie that is by far subpar when compared to its predecessors. However, I think there is a lot to love about it, and I do highly recommend it as an experience, at least to watch it one time. The Invisible Man's Revenge retcons a lot of the stuff from the last movie. In the universe of this film, there's no mention that there's ever been a doctor before who came up with an invisibility serum. It seems to be a brand new idea that has just been invented in the universe of this film. This film also revolves around a criminal who is already a psychotic murderer. He's not crazy per se, but he definitely has some sort of psychosis where he loses his temper and has done some really villainous things. In this production, he is being run out of town because he came to his former friend's house who thought he was dead. Turns out he actually hadn't died. They left him for dead and just didn't realize it. Well, when he comes back and says, "Hey, you made your discoveries on the expedition that you thought I died on, I really want my half of the money." Turns out they thought he was dead, so they spent all of the money, so they have nothing left to give him. He flies into a rage, and one of them drugs him. Once he's out cold, they throw him out and end up getting him through a sequence of events that I won't recap here. You'll have to watch the movie. He ends up being asked to leave the town because he has no proof now that he actually was involved in their expedition at all. So he's leaving town, and he stops by the house of a man on the way who just happens to be a professor, played by John Carradine. Now, I really like John Carradine. I think he's a fantastic actor and very underrated, and he does a great job here. He plays a doctor who has created an invisibility serum, which he tests on all sorts of pets in his house. While he's experimenting on his pets, he says, "Hey, man, since you're being asked to leave the town, why don't I make you invisible? You can be my test subject. And then if you're invisible, you don't have to leave the town. The only thing I ask is that you become my scientific test subject. When this experiment's a success, we'll show you off and show the world that we can, in fact, achieve invisibility." Of course, he undergoes the experiment and becomes invisible. So in this version, he's actually already a criminal. There isn't any big song and dance about him going crazy because of the serum. The serum does not lead to insanity in this production. There are some really good effects with the animals, like a dog harness that walks around by itself, where it expands and retracts like the dog is breathing. Very clever stuff. Now, the effects on the Invisible Man himself are not anywhere near as good as the two previous productions. If you really want to see it at its worst, there's a part where he wakes up from the invisibility potion and now he's invisible and he gets out of bed, and the layering is terrible. I mean, he looks like he's 3 feet tall at one point, and then he walks over and he cuts in front of the pillows that are supposed to be in the foreground. It is just a really sloppy bunch of effects. And it's a shame because, again, the animal effects are pretty good. When he is turning invisible, the effect isn't bad, but once he's invisible, some of the effects that are like compositing effects, they are really tragically bad. Now, where it has redeeming qualities is that it has a lot of fun with this concept, not in terms of a madman who wants to rule the world, but in a really personal way. I wonder, actually, if the remake by Blumhouse of The Invisible Man that came out just a few years ago, I wonder if it wasn't more inspired by this film than by the actual Invisible Man film, because it's all about the personal revenge that this man is getting on people who have wronged him, or he feels have wronged him. And you feel bad for the victims, but there's nothing they can do because he's invisible. It has a lot of fun in some places, like the Invisible Man has an accomplice in this production, whom he threatens, of course, as you would expect. One of the fun things they do is they go and play darts in a bar, and the guy is pretending to throw the darts, and the Invisible Man takes the dart out of his hand and leads it over. And, of course, only one person, the guy he's directly challenging, is like, the dart's going way too slow. This is a trick. And everybody else is like, just pay him his money. It's a really funny scene, and I really enjoyed that whole 3 or 4 minutes in that little bar. Was a real breath of fresh air from some of the other Universal monsters, where they never get to have this level of fun with them. There's also a subplot where he wants to marry the daughter of the people who have wronged him, and so he's planning on getting rid of her boyfriend. And that plot is interesting. It doesn't take up a lot of the film, but it's interesting. There's also a part where he realizes that in order to turn visible again, he has to have a blood transfusion, but it will take all of the blood from somebody else's body to do it, and so he just decides, since he's a murderer anyway, he's just going to kill somebody and take all their blood. It's really fascinating with these films, how they take certain elements from past movies and carry them over, but they drop the ones that don't work with the continuing plot line. I always thought that was really cool because in that way, they sort of explore all of the ideas that you could possibly explore with the plots that they decide to put in these films. He can become visible if he has a blood transfusion. If he becomes visible again, it doesn't last. He'll eventually become invisible again. So the invisibility is permanent in this production. It's fun. It's also funny. I think the original Invisible Man is the most funny of the Universal monster movies. However, this one has a lot of great comedy in it, a lot of great moments. The effects are just bad. I'm just going to be honest with you. There wasn't one moment like the Invisible Man Returns where I was, had my breath taken away. The effects are not even as good as the first movie, so you can really tell they needed time to polish these up. There's also some pretty massive plot holes in the film, but if you can ignore that, I think you'll find a lot to be enjoyed about this film. But overall, I highly suggest you watch it and check it out for yourself. I don't think you'll regret it. At most, you'll have spent an hour or so having a fun time with some characters that are interesting and funny enough to hold your attention. And with this sort of movie, that's really all I'm asking. So thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one.